So let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. Glad to see you all here. Glad to see you here, Gary. So this is the August 22nd meeting of the Canyon City Energy Franchise Committee. I am here. Carol Dunn is on Zoom. Doug Cohen is here. Kirk Schuber's here. Andy Tracy's here. And Kathy Worthington is traveling. And Kirk, you're gonna miss our next meeting in
Yes.
September.
Yes.
It should be recorded. And I'm gonna miss the September 26th. I won't be sure for that. I'm gonna be trying. Head back to see a new brand new. So that should be fine. Yeah. And this will probably be just a more freewheeling thing. But did anybody get a chance to go to the Black Hills vehicle?
No.
I think Kathy expressed an interest in going, she did not. But yeah, I didn't make it either, so that would have been kind of interesting to see that. Maybe they've got that recorded somewhere or something, have something on their website, Black Hills. And of course, upcoming, we do have the demand side management presentation by Black Hills September 12th. And plus, there's been a lot of emails flying around with people commenting on different things and sharing different things. Kathy shared something on whether on the subsidies for electric vehicles, who qualifies and who doesn't. I didn't look at that because I already know I don't qualify. But we kind of continued the discussion on Steve's house. And you know, I had some questions for Steve that he graciously answered. But the reason I had questions is because Steve did a couple of things. He built a really tight, energy efficient house, including installing solar and a battery backup. And because of that, it was not clear from the first analysis that you presented what, you know, who was on first there, where the savings were coming from, whether it was energy efficiency or solar or whatever. And so that was the basis of my questions. And really after looking at that, which said that solar can be, if I can summarize and tell me if I go wrong here, solar can be close to break even on a house, even without subsidies. Is that a fair?
Well, the phrase "even without subsidies" obviously changes things because the $7,000 whatever it was tax credit makes a big difference. Probably the best way to look at it is, can the savings offset the cost on a cash flow basis? And the answer definitely in Black Hills service territory is yes, because the rates are high. In Colorado Springs, it's iffier. For example, I just wrote an article on, I interviewed a bunch of solar installers, and the point was made that the payback is definitely better in Black Hills service territory than it is in Colorado Springs. And Black Hills' own presentation showed that 93%, I believe it was, of the participants in solar over the last couple of years, when they've had the biggest surge ever, did not get the PBI, the production-based incentive, from Black Hills. And they went ahead anyway.
Yeah.
They did get the federal tax credit, which has been slowly declining. It was 30% for a few years. It's been 26%. It was going to go to 22% on January 1, and now it's back up due to the recent bill. It's now back up to 30%.
Yeah.
But so I would say, yeah, due to Black Hills high rates, it's probably cost effective both on the cash flow basis and a payback a payoff basis, pay off. How long does it take to pay off? And now it's 7 to 8 years according to the installer. You might remember my system had batteries and it isn't just batteries, it has linkage, other stuff. You take all that out of it and the payback and the cash flow are more positive.
Right. From my perspective, you know, I tend to make sure that my house is prepared for whatever eventualities might come about, but because of that, because I'm more of a prepper type person, you know, solar looks to me attractive just as a backup in case there's some long-term outage or something. Or, you know, something that truly unanticipated, unanticipatable in you know, electric service. Because once you've got solar, you know, you can always run your appliances during the day, even if you don't have batteries.
True, and if you have batteries, you don't have to have a big battery bank. If you're grid tied, you don't have to have as large a battery bank as you do if you're off grid. Because you can really slim down overnight, if you will, you know, just run a few lights in your fridge and your freezer. Your air conditioner, yeah, depending. I run my air, you know, I have an air conditioner but it's very efficient. It's so
Yeah.
you can even go overnight if you have a small battery bank, but the incremental cost just to go to a small battery bank is substantial just because of the other features in the system.
Yeah.
It's not too surprising, and I was the first person to have a grid tied battery backs that have a battery backup on the Black Hills grid tied system.
So Steve, how large of an area with your batteries, how large of an area does it?
Does the battery take?
Yeah.
About half the table in length and about another 6 inches
In width?
in width.
Well, that's not bad.
No, it's a pretty small little footprint in the corner. Like, it's about that. That's what I think it is. About like this.
You have
I
The
vented up into the
lithium
attic. You have to vent it up into the attic for hydrogen.
you have the lithium iron,
No,
what kind of batteries? do you
lithium
have?
ion. No, I have probably, let's see, I don't know if it's nickel cad or probably nickel cadmium. I don't think it's lead acid.
Lead acid.
I have big batteries, you know, they weigh 100 pounds.
Yeah,
There are 8 of them. On a grid tied house, you'd want more like 12.
they have little caps on them where you can have water and stuff,
These down here do, yeah,
and they're probably lead acid.
yeah, that's true. There you
That's I've got lead acid in my RV, which is solar.
Yeah.
And we can be out in the middle of nowhere and enjoying everything we got. You know.
Yeah.
But it's lead acid.
Yeah.
So
Did
you
you have
said you had to vent out.
Yeah, it's about a 2-inch pipe that goes up into the attic to vent. When your batteries are charged fully,
Yes.
they'll produce a little bit of hydrogen and they
Okay, so
should be
you have to
vented.
vent that out. Do you
Yeah.
have a canopy over them?
Over what? Oh, no,
Your battery?
no, the batteries have to be in an enclosed space. So you have,
Okay,
so it's in the corner of the room, 2 plywood walls.
okay.
And actually, it's 4 plywood walls and something I lift up and it's, you know, it's weather stripped.
Yeah.
We're trying to keep the hydrogen out of the house.
Okay.
There's not a lot of it, but when there is overproducing a little bit, topped up, you'll get a little bit of off gas.
Deep flare, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, sure, maybe I can capture that hydrogen. It's the latest and greatest.
You might remember that lead acid batteries can boil off some of the water. And so that's a yearly check. That's
More often than that, yeah.
depending on the use, yeah.
Back in the 80s, when I didn't know better, I didn't know that you had to fill those batteries. The first set burned up, they went dry. I had no clue. Nobody told me. Learn the hard way.
Okay, does, we really don't have much of a. Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to add or talk about or?
I was reading an article, I don't remember from who or whatever. But it said that it would be 20 to 30 years before this even becomes halfway doable for the general public.
What is it?
Solar
Solar,
Are you talking about?
and wind or wind.
Rooftop, or are you talking about commercial? 'Cause I
No, rooftop.
think that's
It-
different things.
I don't, without subsidies,
Yeah.
it's tough, but, I think that's probably an overstatement. However, if you said, contextually, if you remember the cover sheet that I gave everybody, or there was a sheet in there from the, Lazard analysis, that rooftop solar was far and away the most expensive of the alternatives. And wind, utility scale wind and utility scale solar are now the cheapest. Right? That's what the analysis showed,
Okay,
by far. Compared, not by far, but compared to gas, yeah. If you're gonna build a plant from scratch and you're gonna build gas, and you're comparing gas, nuclear, coal, wind and solar, wind and solar come in first and second. And least expensive over the life of the unit.
so. Brings me to a point. Why is it that the country we buy 2/3 or 3/4 of our stuff from, China? They just continue to build coal-fired plants, my understanding.
They're building solar very fast and they're building wind very fast.
But they're also building more coal.
Yeah, they've slowed down. They have slowed down.
They just have such a population to support, they probably do anything and everything. And to modernize, I should say, my understanding is, people are expecting more over there than perhaps they used to.
But the air pollution in Beijing
Oh.
and the major cities is
Yeah.
just, you can cut it with a knife. I mean,
Yeah.
it's,
That's,
it's terrible. So the people want to get out from under the coal, but, that what they want, what they're gonna get,
that's right.
gonna be two different matters.
Well, if you look at Canyon City years and years ago. When heat was from coal in every house. Up on the coal camps and even down here. This air was just hazy and foggy.
Yeah,
It was
it was
just,
ugly in the '70s.
It was. and, Just, I remember seeing pictures of that and my in-laws and them were raised up in the coal camps and. You look at those pictures from way back. Yeah, it was pretty filthy. And as a side note, we have a wooden coal cook stove in our kitchen. And my wife refuses to let me burn coal in it. Because it's too dirty and she won't wash the walls anymore. Like that, so I understand that. But I find it interesting that. Even though the people in China probably don't have much to say about it. That country is continuing to build coal-fired plants for energy to supply us with stuff.
It's hard to imagine an environmental movement in China. And an
Oh,
military-
well, certainly, certainly.
So, it's just gonna be different. Speaking of Canyon City, I can remember. When I first moved here, that right here in town, you knew that people were burning coal. To
Stinks.
stay warm, it stinks. And yeah, the air at night would settle in over town, it was smelly and not so helpful.
I drove to Pueblo for probably 15 years, first part of my meat inspection career. And you could tell when you got to the south part of town. You could smell the coke and the coal and stuff at the mill. It just was there. Boom.
Okay, so, anything else? We're really just kind of sitting around chewing the fat today. We don't have a really good agenda. Did you have something, John?
I just wanted to, I saw that you had under old business our electric vehicle event, so I thought that, I don't know. I don't think anyone attended,
The
right?
cat was naked, She
I
was the
don't-
one that.
I don't think she did. I don't remember seeing her. So it did go very well, I just wanted to comment, I saw the string of emails about electric vehicle chargers here. I understood the city is putting some in, is that correct? Or did you guys apply for a grant?
Yeah, the Charge Point put in Sue over in the Peabody lot.
Okay.
I don't know if they ever went active in that, what they were waiting on a transformer.
Okay,
Where's this? The Peabody parking lot.
Chamber of Commerce.
Used to be.
The old chamber office.
Since I'm not in
Actually,
town,
still-
what's the intersection Yeah, it's between Fourth and Fifth. between Fourth and Fifth on?
Because driving by today, the inside of the Peabody Mansion was pretty terrible for Chamber of Commerce.
I'll take a look and see if they're out there.
Yeah.
so I just kind of followed that email chain and just wanted to remark that that's exactly the sort of thing that falls under that EV. I mean, as you saw that program, that's kind of what we're talking about. And if the city has an interest in building out their charging infrastructure, that falls under that program. There's incentives under the program. And in addition to that, we've been interested in helping, like we did with the city. We put infrastructure, at our cost to help them with some of that. So I just want to make that comment. That's the sort of kind of partnership that we continue to speak to in that MOU. Look, that's just one example.
Thanks for that. Carol, did you have something?
Yeah, I had a question, and maybe next time I saw a new Black Hills bill, John. And I
Yes,
remember you
yeah.
saying it was much simpler. Well, okay, if you say so. My kids that run the meat processing plant got theirs, and it's much higher than it was last year, and you can't compare. I mean, you can compare, okay, kilowatt, but you can't compare as far as what they're being charged, per kilowatt or any kind of demand charges or anything. So maybe, I don't know if we want to take time to look at that maybe next time. I know people will be asking questions about it from either us or you. So if we want to, go through that and kind of see how to read it, that might be helpful.
Okay, so I'll comment, Carol, that all of the charges that are there today, they were on the prior bill. There are a couple, so the line items are still there. They've been reorganized a little bit. So they're organized from, the cost of inputs, if you will. And then you've got transmission costs and you've got, different sections, I guess, of that bill to help you better understand what it costs to actually produce electricity, and then what's being falling kind of below that line, which is what's being mandated through the state, that sort of thing, some of the other things that are there. And so that was kind of the purpose for some of that reorganization, but all of the same stuff is there. With a couple of exceptions, there's a couple of new riders. One is the Storm Uri charge that we have talked about in the past. One is the electric vehicle program that you all just heard about. There's a small rider for that. There's also a low income component that was passed at the state level. That is new to your energy bill. And if you look at both your electric and your gas bills for all providers in the state, that is new. It's, I believe, 50 cents, and it's going to go up to 75 cents next year, if I remember correctly. So those are three kind of new line items that weren't on the prior bill. And then just from the perspective of the bill itself, all those three riders are not really what's driving the cost. I think I've remarked at this group before. Natural gas prices continue to remain high, and the energy cost adjustment it's adjusted every quarter to reflect the cost of natural gas. And that has been, moving up Carol, for the last several adjustments,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
what's driving that cost.
Okay, all right. I didn't know if that would be, if the group thought it'd be useful or not, but maybe by the time you get your new bill, you will have some questions. So, because I haven't gotten my residential bill, but this just looked like fairly confusing to me. But thanks, John. I appreciate the information.
And I'm happy to put some side by side for you. I think we can do that.
Well, if y'all think it'd be useful, we may, hopefully we'll have other things to discuss at our next meeting. I'm not sure what, but we'll find something, I'm sure. Thank you.
Yes,
John,
we're in the next week. Yes,
didn't Black Hills do away with demand charges yet or not?
they did it with every class except for the largest commercial class.
Yeah,
Okay,
and see, I'm looking at a different kind of class at this bill. It's small business or small commercial or whatever. So, I just wasn't sure that I was looking at the right things on that particular bill.
excuse me, Carol, would a small meat processing business, not like Alpha Beta or anything like that, but a small meat processing business, where would they fall in the scheme of things?
In the small commercial without a demand charge,
With what?
but small commercial without a demand charge.
Without demand
Without.
charge. Okay, thank you.
Here's the split. It used to be you had a demand charge between 10 and 50 kW, small commercial, that went away. The one that's 50 to 1400, that's still there. So 50 is the break point. So the smallest ones went away, everything else, I believe, stayed. And 50, some churches will fall into 50.
Yeah.
So I mean,
That's
50 is Carol's, not Carol's, the ice cream shop down here
Yeah.
would have been under 50, but over 10. She had a demand charge. Hers went away, but as luck would have it, when the demand charge went away for her, her bills actually went up. They went up about 30%. So, it depends on what kind of user you are. She was a high user, steady demand. If you, and because you think about it, all the freezers they're always going all the time. So
Sure.
they aren't a boom and bust the way a church is.
Sure,
So a church is big on Sunday. So
some of them.
some, there you go. So I believe only the small commercial from 10 to 50 went away.
You're correct in that, Steve. Thank you.
I lost the bill that she sent me and now she sent it back to me. Their rate schedule is WPER 8379 COPE2. So I don't know what that means, but that's what it says.
We'll get right on
that. Will you repeat that?
You're way off the chart, Carol.
I'm sorry. It's WPE rate 83. And then in parentheses, it says 79. And in parentheses, it's COPE2.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
that's different than residential, I take it.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Just trying to be up to date and figure out what's going on. Thank you.
Yes.
So we're kind of skinny on our agenda here today. Carrie, do you have any questions you'd like to ask us?
Yeah, and I can talk to you after if you want. I just kind of want to get an idea of where you guys are at
Well,
and what your next steps are. And
Yes, why don't you ask the committee, because there are some different opinions, and so
Oh, okay.
if you got some questions, fire away and we'll answer as a committee. How about that?
Sure. And I'll be typing my notes if I'm not looking at you. That's why I'm typing. Yeah, so when did you guys start meeting again? Just kind of a recap on that.
Well, so we,
March?
yeah, let's see if I've got it.
July or earlier August of last year.
Yeah, I think the committee was formed in May, right? That's my recollection.
My first agenda is August 23rd.
Really? Of last year.
last year. Oh, wait, no, I take that back, that's in one place. It's, July 19th.
Okay, and how often do you meet?
Let me say that.
Once a month or?
Well, let me
Twice
take that back, that's, I'm looking in the wrong place, I looked at the right place. June 14th
Oh,
is
okay.
the first agenda that,
That's been over a year.
yeah.
Okay, and what are the dates and times, on Mondays?
The second and fourth Mondays, and we set aside 10 to noon. A lot of time, most of the time, we've used that whole time. But things have kind of settled down here a little bit. Where we're kind of in a little bit of a holding pattern right now.
And the first step, were you accepting letters of interest?
Yes, so
And
when
then
the committee when the council authorized the committee, the city advertised positions available. Because we have although we've changed a little bit in what the city authorization has been. But currently, the committee will consist of up to 9 members appointed by city council. So there'll be 2 city council members, 2 to 3 business owners, 2 to 3 Canyon City residents, and 2 Canyon City Energy Futures members, and up to 3 council members.
Okay,
So up to 9 people.
and did you solicit letters of interest from electric providers? What are the 3 letters that you got? What were those?
So those were unsolicited,
Oh,
unsolicited.
okay.
And so those were letters of interest saying, hey, Canyon City, we see you've got an energy franchise company. That is supposed to be, the focus of the committee is to evaluate, review, and make recommendations concerning energy options. So that would include a franchise or other things. And because of that, because of the options part of it, we had some interest on the provider side to provide, and people that might potentially provide services, electric services for Canyon City.
And did each of those give a presentation? Those 3?
We had, yes, and we invited all kinds of people. We invited the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission of Colorado, to give a presentation, which they did, and had a staff member. That was one of the first presentations we had. And we had presentations by the city of Mountain, for instance, had presentations by Core Electric. We had a presentation from San Isabel, I think Rich showed up.
And Sunbury Crystal.
Sunbury Crystal.
Out in Vista.
And so they were not always proposing commercial services for Canyon City, but came in to talk to us about the status of electricity sales within the state altogether.
And there's been long-term interest from Guzman, which is an electricity wholesaler. They actually met with Canyon City's Energy Futures, I think, once or twice before the city even created its advisory committee. And Guzman still, as far as I know, last I heard, Guzman still has an interest. They're a wholesaler, so that model would require some form of municipalization by the city. But that's part of kind of these multiple things that are hanging out there in terms of potential options, I guess I'd call them.
So we published a review of what we've done to date. Okay, this committee has, we gave it to city council. And that was, what, 3 or 4 months ago?
Okay, I think I was covering that.
Yeah,
That was the
December.
latest.
There's been a couple of them.
November,
December,
December.
we gave a presentation in
Yes.
December.
Well, 8 months
No,
ago.
there was. There an update in April.
Yeah.
Yes, we did an update on it. So there's original and then an update. So we've done a couple presentations, but, you know, really the committee did put together, and mainly based on Kirk Souther's work, did put together quite a lot of information about the status of electricity sales in the state. It's, you know, a lengthy document, but it's, well, if you want to understand how things work, it's almost necessary.
And then, so you said you're in a holding pattern. Are you waiting for council's response, or are you still waiting on information?
So we're the, there are a couple of proposals, several proposals to the city about how things could work in the future. And those are to city council, not to this committee necessarily. So city council is dealing with those. In addition, there's a rate case in front of the PUC that the city has intervened in and has been granted intervenor status. Did everybody get a copy of that? You won't get a copy of that.
The legal document.
Yeah, it says they granted us.
I don't remember seeing the actual document.
You might have been gone on that.
Yeah.
I think you were gone.
But so it's
Yeah, I'll look there. Yes, I was looking.
and so what we're waiting on is for city council, I guess is the right way to say it. Does that sound right, Ryan, that we're in a holding pattern because we're waiting for city council direction, commercial possibilities.
Yes.
About the two proposals?
That's several.
Oh, more. Have there been three? Or how many proposals?
Over time, it was.
Yes.
Well, what are we dealing with at the present time? As far as proposals go, Core said, thanks, but no thanks. If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's right.
Oh,
Okay, of course, as Emily said, I suspect Guzman's still in the offing. Is that correct?
That would be one that's.
But they don't
Still under-
provide. They're just a middle person that works things out, right?
Right. They're what,
They're
they're.
a wholesale.
Yes,
They provide electricity.
Your mouth, Doug.
Say what?
do you have a time frame of when you think you'll hear direction from the council?
From council,
Because they meet in executive session to discuss that one.
yes, since it involves possible negotiations with an entity, that's why those are executive session undertakings.
If they chose one of the providers outside of Black Hills, would they have to buy out all the Black Hills infrastructure? How does that work?
So that's the answer to that is really complicated. Because it involves lawyers and it involves potential court action. Black Hills is an entity that wishes to continue to provide electric service and has a monopoly right to do that. The monopoly right is granted by the Public Service, Public Utilities Commission. And so because of that monopoly right, there's, if they don't want to sell, they don't have to. If you remember several years ago, when Pueblo was looking at, possibly going their own way, and having their own electric, municipalization essentially for electric services. San Isabel made an offer to buy all of Black Hills interests in the state for about $1 billion or so. And Black Hills turned it down, and that was the end of it. Because Black Hills is under no obligation to sell unless they so choose to. There are, but it gets, like I said, it's complicated because there are other things that come into play. Black Hills does occupy the city rights of way. They do have the right to provide service, electric service in this area. But there are the city, since there is no franchise, the city does have options that it could look at to change that. And that's where it gets really sticky, because that would involve essentially, a conflict with Black Hills. And because they would like to stay with the light. And that's why John Neal is here, is because of that interest. And I must say, support for the committee, because Black Hills has been here pretty much for all of our meetings and has answered a lot of questions for us, provided a lot of information. And thankfully, they have done that. That's a thanks to Black Hills.
John, may I make one comment?
Sure.
So we don't have a rate case, we have a clean energy plan
Thank you.
that is required to be filed.
Thank you.
So, but the city is intervening as appropriately they should.
Yes.
And the name of the clean energy plan, if I remember right, is 2030 ready plan. or
Yeah, something like that.
I think I have it on my iPad. We need to look it up. And, something else I was gonna say, but keep going, it'll come back.
And so part of what Black Hills is responding to is legislative direction from Denver to the legislative direction to the whole state is, 80% carbon reduction by 2030.
So is all of your research and investigative work done for now? Until you hear back from council? And I know you guys really, did a lot of research and.
I would say so. What
One thing I was going to mention also is that it's hard to describe the complexity of this process, and it's made complex because of the nature of state law and how electric services provided in the state. The fact that each provider has their own area that the state says you get to serve this area exclusively, particularly in terms of the investor-owned utilities. So that makes that's one of the many pieces that makes the process complex. And we're I'll just say that the discussions aren't over. We just, as a city, I think it's fair to say, we just don't know yet how it's all going to come out. It's been quite an education for all of us working on it, and it continues to be. But there are still discussions occurring from time to time, and people looking at it from different perspectives.
So the bottom line, the reason why, that we're looking here at this is the, as the Public Utilities Commission has found, Black Hills has what can be characterized as high electric rates. Okay, and so the question that we're asking, that we're trying to ask for ourselves and on behalf of the city, is there some cheaper alternative? It's possible, but it's so dependent on so many different things, including the potential outcome of court cases and things like that make it extremely difficult to answer that question.
John, would it be appropriate to let Carrie know the 3 different kinds of providers and who's controlled by what?
Sure. Kurt, you wanna?
We have the investor-owned utilities is one of them, like Black Hills
Black
is,
Hills.
and
That means for profit.
for-profit. They have shareholders.
And they're controlled by the PUC
Yes,
to include rate setting.
Regulated by the.
regulated by the PUC. Yeah, they're regulated on just about everything they do.
Right.
And then you have rural cooperatives, which there's quite a few in Colorado. They really initiated because a lot of times your investor utilities didn't want to go into the areas where there weren't as many people living because it costs more money. So those are more of a cooperative, so they don't. They don't have the taxes and everybody that is part of the co-op is part owner of the co-op.
And so every utility has to set aside money for capital, repairs and investing and improving things. Co-ops do that, investor-owned utilities do that. But then if there's any profit left over, that's returned to the customers under the co-op.
Oh,
So it's a not-for-profit undertaking.
Is that where they have a board of directors
Mhm.
consisting of local?
Yes, like San Isabel, like Core.
Okay.
And the third,
Is municipal operation. Utility there
And fountain.
in Fountain, yeah.
And you said Fountain came and made a presentation, or they told you kind of how their process went, how it's going, what did they say?
well, they've had a municipality for many decades, or municipalized utility, I should say. They are, if I'm remembering right, they're transitioning to using Guzman Energy as their wholesale provider. And so some of the discussion was about that.
One of the issues is that if you were starting from scratch, you have to install poles and transformers and things like that. And so there's a kind of a there can be a get started cost for municipalization. It has been many decades since anybody municipalized in Colorado. And that's part of the reason is that to get started is can be very expensive.
And the state law makes it very difficult to have a choice. We're not like some other states where there's a choice at the retail level or whatever, where Colorado is just not structured that way. So it's really hard to make a change.
Mr. Gill, did you want to say anything since you've been a part of this and you're a current provider?
I guess the one thing I would say is that we have also offered to the city that, we try and work collaboratively, identify energy priorities and see if we can find some common ground. I think it's appropriate to note that, we don't set the rates, the PUC sets the rates. And so, it is a recovery of investment for sure. But ultimately, the Public Utilities Commission is the rate setting body.
They're the rate approving body, you guys ask.
We propose recovery of investment and they choose whether or not that investment was appropriate and recoverable. And if they don't see that to be the case, they disallow costs.
And we bring back to what John Hamrick said a few minutes ago, there was a study, and we can provide that if we did a study that the Public Utilities Commission did. And they released their report February of 2021, if I remember right. And it was a study they were directed to do the study by the state legislature, and they were looking at investor-owned utilities in particular. And the cost to customers. They were looking to see if there was any provider whose rates were materially higher than the state average, and they found that Black Hills Energy's rates were materially higher. A significant percentage higher than the statewide average for cost to customers and other providers. So I just wanted to kind of elaborate a little bit on what John was saying.
There was actually a third presentation or another presentation by a potential electricity generator, which was outside of Penrose, where they were going to do pumped storage. So they were going to create a big reservoir, pump water up during the day, and then have water generate electricity at night. And they came and talked to us also. Was that Ortis?
Yes, I think so.
ORTUS? But they haven't, since that presentation, we really haven't.
Okay. So you looked at all the options and did you come up with the recommendation already that you sent to council?
We're really not done with some behind the scenes discussions. Is that a fair way to say it? I don't think that we're quite done with information gathering.
And that would be city council. City
Yes.
council is behind the scenes
Oh.
discussions, not the committee.
Thanks for the update.
Sure.
But I think also we are getting more information like with next meeting, the demand side management, Black Hills is going to be telling us. In a little bit more detail about the programs that they do have on board. And we're also looking at, and I don't know, John, if you have any updates about the new federal legislation, how that. Anything that might be of benefit to us here locally. It's probably too early yet, but we'll be keeping our eyes open for that.
Yeah, we've got teams internally that are looking at all that federal legislation. It's hard to keep up with. I don't know that we have. And we will be in a position to share that in the near future. But I'm keeping an eye on it. Kirk, yeah.
But that's just more information that we're gathering.
And so we should keep our eyes open as individual committee members. If we see something about that, that is pertinent to what we're doing, bring it to the committee.
30% underwriting of heat pump, energy efficient heat pumps at some level was what was written up in the Wall Street Journal today. Or no, a couple days ago, a few days ago.
Tell me again.
30% rebate up to a certain amount for an energy efficient air source heat pump. Which, if you have air conditioning, those kinds of appliances can perhaps save you considerably, but they're also intended to be a replacement for your furnace as well, which then it depends very much on how efficient your house is as to whether or not that makes sense.
Sure.
That kind of thing. In my house, it makes a lot of sense, and I have an air source heat pump. Actually, I have mini splits, which are even higher efficiency, but that is a big push for the quote electrify everything. And it's going to be debatable in various locations and building specific as to whether or not it makes sense.
So we just had a ductless unit put in.
Yeah,
That's
on the
both
wall.
air conditioning and heat pump.
It's a split, it's called a mini split. It has an outside and has a unit and it's on the wall.
Right.
Those are extremely efficient. They can be, the average heat pump used to be have an efficiency of 10, and then it went to, sorry, not heat pump, air conditioner 10 SEER, and then it went to 12 SEER minimum threshold and so on. We were talking 20 and 30 SEER here, and you can't, I don't think there's a whole house unit that's quite that efficient yet. So the mini splits are very efficient. And there will be money to install that kind of equipment starting January 1. I don't know the details.
Maybe we gotta tear ours out, put another one in, so we get that plan back.
I'm sorry about that. The timing isn't great. It's like me with Black Hills, I put my level 2 charger in for my electric vehicle in 2012, 14, 15, something like that. So I'm not a participant in their program. Actually, I don't think I would have wanted to because of the time of use rates that go along with it. So.
So Carrie, as you might gather, Steve is all into this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And he's very, very up on it. And his electric car has picked up like you wouldn't believe.
Just
Did you give him a
I
ride?
just gave John a ride. Anybody else wants to have a ride in an EV?
It does cut down on the efficiency of it, though.
Yes, it does.
The
If you
Tesla.
floor it, if you've got it, I'm a granny driver, but I did show Doug that it does have, it's not a golf cart technology.
No, it's got some, No,
Yeah.
Is it a Tesla or?
No,
No,
no, it's a Bolt, Chevy Bolt. I wasn't gonna buy a Tesla, that's. This is, they'll be on sale this December for $26,000. That's a competitive vehicle.
that's a Tesla.
No, the
Bolt.
Bolt,
Oh, okay.
the Bolt will be on sale for $26,027. That's the entry level, which is what I.
Yeah.
Well, you could, pretty soon you can buy a Mustang.
Oh, you could, no,
I
the
mean,
Mustang,
they're all-
the mayor of Pueblo's had a Mustang, EV Mustang for 2 years.
Well, according to what I heard. Ford, Dodge, they're putting their muscle cars,
In the EV, yeah,
EVs.
Wow.
that's right.
Yeah. Terry, I wanted to just add something that Steve mentioned a minute ago, that the content, one of the context pieces to all of this is that the state of Colorado and the feds are all moving toward electrification of buildings and transportation. And so there's a concern, at least on the part of myself and others, some others, that in an area like the Black Hills Service Territory where we pay among the we're all for electrification. It makes sense from an environmental point of view. But we've got to figure out how to kind of moderate on the side of the cost. Or, the people who struggle to pay their bills as it is now are going to have a very tough time. As more and more things become run on electricity, we've got to make sure that that's affordable.
And unfortunately, John mentioned that, John Villa mentioned a little while ago that gas prices, natural gas prices are in a new volatile environment. They've tripled since last year at this time, more or less. The spot market contracts are different, but if you're buying gas today, you're gonna pay $9.30-40 per million BTU versus $3 in some a year ago. And one of the advantages long-term to wind and solar is that once you invest in the equipment, there is no fuel cost, and therefore that variability, which sometimes can be out of our controls, like the war in the Ukraine is driving up the price of natural gas in Europe by a factor of more like 500%, not 300%. And that's rolling overseas here. And that will be hit again in December when an export facility in Texas that had an explosion back in June and reduced our exports of natural gas. Fires, when it gets operating again, it will be increasing our exports of natural gas, which will bring us more in line with world prices. We won't get fully in line with world prices, not even close. But it will have an impact. So the near-term future, the year-out future of natural gas prices looks to be volatile, short of some miraculous resolution to the Ukraine-Russian war.
That doesn't even count the other issues going on with fossil fuel. Just the environmental side of that and what's happening on the regulatory side with gas fracking and those kinds of things. I was going to say before Steve said what he did, I was going to say it's important to note that the supplier of solar and wind energy just does not ever increase costs. The supplier of those fuels is 0, 0, 0. It's the infrastructure that is the variable.
And the problem with, of course, the wind and solar is the storage, which really hasn't been solved, I believe, commercially yet. So in essence, wind and solar are unreliable.
Yeah.
That's unfair. That's completely unfair. Completely unfair.
It's not.
Wind and solar at 100% without storage backup is unreliable.
Right,
And not only that, it won't take you through the night. So you
Right.
need, so,
there you go.
but I would submit
That's
that.
all I'm saying. I'm not saying.
That's not what you said.
But it doesn't produce at night, and so therefore it's unreliable.
I
Constant energy source.
Along with the fact of the weather.
Without wind, you don't have wind.
And
So we
Without
have-
sunshine, you don't have solar.
We have differences in.
Yeah.
but you said flat out it is unreliable. On a system nationwide basis. That they can incorporate wind and solar at a higher fraction than they originally thought. With a system reliability, as in you have backups. Black Hills has a nice little Ferrari in the garage. When they need to fire it up. They can do that. In fact, they can meet their entire load with natural gas. So in their case, it's merely a matter of how much solar and how much wind you get on an hourly and a daily basis. But on a monthly, weekly, monthly, and annual basis, it is reliable.
It is unreliable and that it cannot supply all of your energy needs.
Oh,
It is unreliable.
But let's go back to the clean energy plan that Black Hills has proposed. And John can say it better than I. By the year 2030, what's the percentage for renewables that you expect for generation?
80%.
80%.
I guess,
However-
isn't reliability your biggest single concern, John?
But the only reason that you can do that is if you have dispatchable energy behind it, and
Yeah,
that's the value of the Pueblo Airport Generating Station. To your point, we can meet 100% of our load with natural gas today. So any wind or solar we build simply offsets the use of gas.
Right.
So that's the value of our system. And the value of, you referred to it as a Ferrari, but the reality is something that can go from 0 to 100% capacity in 12 minutes. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Technology.
You could think of it like a stovetop, almost, not quite, but almost.
So you have to have diversification with the key.
Currently, today we do, yes.
Currently,
We still
and-
need to.
And battery technology is improving, but it is not, I agree with John Hamrick that it is definitely not a place where 100% of the system can be just renewables and batteries. We're not there.
We're not.
We're far from them. And I don't even think 100% will ever be.
Not with
That's
Lifestyle
dreamland to me.
you know, if we
Probably
change
not in my
from
lifetime.
Agrarian lifestyle, maybe we could do it, but.
Not in my lifetime.
With the way we're going with our society that wants everything right now. We won't see it in our lifetime.
But 80% by 2030.
80% by 2030, yeah. And XL is headed in the same direction.
So as a counter. If you were, 150 years ago, if you heard that there was gonna be this newfangled invention called a motor car. You didn't go out and shoot your horses.
Right.
And that's what we've been doing with our coal plants. We've been shooting our horses.
I don't think we're doing that. We're not asking Black Hills to dismantle PEGs, right? I don't.
It's not a coal-fired plant.
Well, I know,
right there.
but it's fossil. fuel.
Our energy costs greatly improved
Yes.
when that was,
You said.
when that was
coal,
torn down.
Oil and gas. What do you think that means? Yes, I know. So there's a
Sounds
difference
getting
of
a real
opinion.
person,
Well, come on, guys. Let's say it like it is. It's not here. No matter how much you want to talk about clean energy, it isn't here. It's not going to be here in our lifetime in a reliable source.
Steve is sick.
So get with it.
I'm
So,
dumbfounded.
I'll
80%,
tell you
80%,
why that's true.
80%.
Steve, I'll tell you why, that's a legislative direction. That's not a market response. Okay.
Black Hills
here's
That's
why it's
not true, John.
Is.
I mean, yes, it's half true. It's half true.
Okay,
it's half true.
And yours is half true.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
I think I'm coming from the facts.
I'll tell you why solar is not reliable. Are we gonna have solar energy produced in this state in December? As we have today? And you can't predict that. You cannot know whether we're gonna have solar energy produced because it might be snowing. And there will be zero produced or very little.
That's not zero.
I believe I just said that on a daily basis, hourly and daily basis, you cannot predict it. However, NREL and others have,
That's my point. It's because of that. it's
well,
not reliable.
your point was about 100%.
It's
That
not
was what
reliable.
was,
It's not reliable is what I said. I didn't say it. It's not reliable.
and I would point you to the national labs and their ability now through weather programs to tell you exactly how much solar and how much wind you're gonna have. Not exactly, but pretty close ballpark, tomorrow and the day after and the day after that. So, that means that in moving towards the 80, you'll have a fairly reliable sense of what you're gonna need to provide to supplement the wind and solar, that what will come from which source.
Short. Short.
Yeah, that's on an annual
But I
basis too.
would expect Black Hills to say, this can't be done, if it couldn't be done. I would expect Black Hills to tell us,
Well,
we can't set a 2030.
hey, they've been dictated to.
They make money out of it.
No,
They're
they
gonna-
have written the plan.
Well, I'll just, but just for context, remember, our, today, our base load is about 400 megawatts, right?
430.
So 430.
Oh, no, that's your peak. I'm
That's our-
sorry.
That's our.
I'm
peak.
sorry.
So our base load's about 400, right? In order, and we can serve 100% today, in order to meet our clean energy goal, we're adding, I don't want to misstate the numbers, we keep this out, this is not.
Okay.
quotable.
I have it.
459 megawatts is what we're building. We already have that much and we're doubling it so we could meet the clean energy plan. And we're adding batteries. I mean, that's for size and scale, you just kind of have to get your arms around that.
149 megawatts of wind and 258 megawatts of solar, plus 50 megawatts of battery storage. That's in your executive. session.
Correct. So that's the number.
And-
That's what's being built on top of what we already have
Right.
renewable, which is about 160 and I think it's about 100. I don't want to misquote, let's say 90. But so we already have that, and on top of that, we have PEGs. And that's what it's going to take to get to 80% clean energy. That's the overbuild that you have to do.
And at the same time,
And you
you
still have-
forecast prices relatively flat between now and 2030.
And for two reasons, and one of those is the addition of renewables, and the second is a reduction in natural gas prices long term.
Yeah,
So I know your
The
point.
near
There-
term
You
on-
you said that we're in an unprecedented kind of, the price fluctuation. Historically, gas prices have been that way. We have been in a historically low
Yes.
with the boom of fracking, but historically, if you look back over 50, 80 years, natural gas prices have historically fluctuated. Pretty
yeah,
good.
but they don't triple very often.
No, you're absolutely right. The Storm Uri thing was 100-year
And
experience.
Texas could do that to us again. Because they have not solved their problem.
So
Watch out.
that being said, puts us in even more of a precarious position depending on Mother Nature. What are you gonna do? Hey, God, turn on the sun, would you?
Doug, seriously.
I'm
You're
being
sitting
very
next to
serious.
Someone who has a solar home.
With that.
It's just a matter of, it's backup. There's backup, Doug. You don't have to pray, you just check the weather forecast. It's backup. He's
Okay,
got
this-
backup.
This is probably good enough here.
Well, I'm glad everybody stayed. It was interesting. I like to hear all about it.
Hey, we have never had a discussion like this.
It was great. Thank you.
But this is not our direction.
No, no.
Okay.
Unless somebody has something else.
No, I'll just say we appreciate that Black Hills has been a part of these
Yes.
meetings and clearly they have, their own end goal in mind, which is totally understandable, but it's also been helpful to have the information that they provided, the presentations.
Thank you.
Well, Thank you for staying.
I'll ditto that.
And with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you, Carrie, for coming.
Thank you.
Not necessarily part of this meeting time, but they're not waiting on a transformer.